بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين صلى الله وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. It's so good to have all of you here and to be speaking with you, inshallah, for this next segment of this program, which is the fiqh aspect or the rulings of fasting, inshallah, that I will take over from here. MashaAllah, barakallahu fiqh, Sheikh Nasir, Abdul Nasir, who already left, but may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless him and reward him for his hard work and enlighten us with those beautiful advices and words that he shared with us, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it beneficial for us and makes our Ramadan a blessed Ramadan, a very fruitful Ramadan, inshallah. Before I begin, I just wanted to share a few disclaimers about this program. This program, inshallah, is geared towards mature audience because we're going to be talking about the fiqh, the rulings of fasting. And for underage minors, I would suggest that they do not attend. But I just wanted to put that disclaimer out there. That we will be going over a few contents that might be not appropriate for minors. So that's the first disclaimer, inshallah. The second is that if you were present, if I was with you in a gathering, I would have asked everyone, how many of you have attended this workshop in the past years that we did this program? So, but half of the group, I think, is on Facebook or YouTube, so I will pass that part. However, for those who attended in the previous ones, inshallah, I will summarize basically the same course because the rulings stay the same, the Ramadan is the same. This is just to refresh, inshallah, our understanding of the fiqhi aspect of Ramadan. Also, my focus in terms of the schools, there are many schools of thought, but I will be talking from the perspective of the Hanafi school because basically that's the maslak or the madhab that I follow, and I'm confident in talking about from that perspective. However, there might be slightly different opinions from other scholars that I might mention, but not necessarily, inshallah. This will be a very short and a brief summary of the rulings of fasting. It would not be we will not go into a lot of details. However, I will go through some details in terms of practical examples of what are the things that break the fast, for example, what are the things that do not break the fast, what are the scenarios that nullify the fast, and so on and so forth. Inshallah, in the end, we'll go to a Q&A. So all the things that I will be mentioning, there might be a lot of questions that you may want to ask. Feel free to put that in the chat box as soon as you can. So that saves, and if I would like to address it on the spot, I could do that. Otherwise, I will go to the Q&A towards the end of the session, but please do go ahead. If you have any questions, put that in the chat on YouTube and Facebook. You could also add that there, and that will be transferred to Zoom, inshallah. I usually try to go over kind of like all in one-stop shop for all the rulings of Ramadan that consists of fasting, of sadaqat al-fitr, of expiation, the kafarat, and as well as zakat. However, I will not go into all of those things, inshallah. I will leave that to perhaps another session, if possible, before Ramadan, inshallah, that we will talk about the zakat and sadaqat al-fitr and those things that are somewhat related to the fasting of Ramadan, but not, but they are just indirectly related to Ramadan because we just happen to do our zakat in the month of Ramadan. So hopefully that we could set up another meeting for that. So basically, inshallah, we're going to just talk about simply just the fasting, and we will leave the rest, inshallah, for a later tentative program, inshallah, that we will share with you as soon as we finalize it. So inshallah, I will go through some notes here, inshallah, so that you can see it. And if you want to write, you want to take notes, inshallah, you could take notes. Again, if you have any question that comes to mind, just put that in the chat, inshallah. Hopefully that we could address it as we go or towards the end. So what are we going to cover? Just like I mentioned, the rulings about the fasting of Ramadan 2020. I have taken out a few things that are not related to this particular Ramadan. And what else we're going to talk? We're going to talk more about the month of Ramadan. So basically, it's just about fasting, inshallah. So let's look at first to the obligation of fasting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Baqarah, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "O you who believe, Allah kutiba," here it's a passive form, but Allah has prescribed, or the fasting has been prescribed to you, just like it was prescribed to the people who came before you, so you may gain piety, taqwa. So when we look at the verse, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba, this verse, the scholars say that this verse made the fasting of Ramadan a fard. A fard is an obligation. And it's a very technical term in our tradition that when we say fard, it's not just a simple translation of the word obligation or compulsory. It has a very specific meaning. And normally in a short form, you could say that anything that is established from the Quran or equivalent to the Quran, which is hadith mutawatir, then that is called fard. So clearly this ayah is saying that Allah has, or it's been prescribed upon you, or it's made obligatory upon you to fast. The fasting has been made obligatory upon you. So from this we understand that it became obligatory to perform the current, the present, or the Ramadan that you are present in, the current Ramadan, as well as making up the unperformed Ramadan which was missed. So this particular part where you did not fast, for example, any day, or for instance, the entire month of Ramadan, then next year, or the time that follows after that, you will have to make up that fast. It just doesn't go away. The fasting that once becomes obligatory upon someone, it does not go away until the person does it, until the person performs it. Just like a person who has to pray for salah. If a person misses a salah, according to the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, that whenever you remember, if a person forgets or sleeps on salah, that a person fell asleep, didn't wake up, and the time has passed, then the person should pray إِذَا ذَكَرَهَا, whenever the person remembers. So that applies even to fasting. So that if a person cannot fast a particular day of Ramadan, then that fasting, it's still an obligation, but it will be offered later on, and it will be a makeup fast. It will be a qada later on. And according to the Hanafi school, there is no time limit for the expiration of that particular fast. So if someone did not fast 20 years ago, it's still an obligation for that person to make up that fast, and it does not expire after 1 year or 2 years or a month or so. So that will remain an obligation. So um, this verse is the main verse that is in the Quran that makes the fasting an obligation upon certain type of people. Now, that's, we understood that now fasting is an obligation, but what is fasting? Because fasting, from different traditions and different cultures and different practices, people have different understanding of fasting. Some people will fast by not eating a full meal, but drinking something light, having something, a small snack. They will call that fasting. Some people will go hungry for a week, not eat or drink, and just drink a little bit of liquid to stay hydrated. Is that called fasting? So from the Islamic perspective, what is the definition of fasting that uh, makes it an obligation upon us to fast that particular fasting and not the others? So here is the summary, the breakdown of the definition of fasting. So these are the breakdowns. Um, Refraining from engaging in sexual activity and refraining from entering anything into the body cavity. And we'll come to that, what does that actually mean? Whether deliberately or accidentally. Deliberately, it means that someone knew that he was fasting, and purposefully, with his own intention and with his own will, this person does something that is contrary to fasting. He starts to eat or drink. So that's deliberately. Accidentally is that a person, um, he does not remember that he was fasting and then suddenly he started to drink. So a person who is uh, in a state of that he remembers of that he's fasting and he does it with his own will. So these two components have to exist to make the fasting invalid or contrary to fasting. So so deliberately or accidentally. Accidentally mean by a person's own will. Um, from the time of sunrise till the uh, till the sunset. So uh, sun begins to rise. So it's not actually the sunrise. That's why it says sun begins to rise. And that's normally understood by the break of dawn. So the break of dawn is the time when a person has to start fasting, and that's when the fasting will apply. So meaning if someone did eat and drink before sunrise, but after the break of dawn, then that person will not be considered from the Islamic perspective that he is fasting or she is fasting. It has to be from the break of dawn. And I think at this point it's somewhere around, I don't know, the first day of Ramadan, it will be somewhere around 4:40-ish, between 4:30 and 4:40. I can't remember exactly when the timing. I'll have to look that up. So anyway, so the break of dawn, and also depending on some of the differences in the degrees of the sun, 18 degree, 15 degree, both of them are fine to practice. If someone wants to be more scrupulous, he could take the 18 degree, which is about 20 minutes of a difference from the 15 degree. So, but both are legitimate opinions that a person can practice. So it has to be from the break of dawn until sunset. So if a person eats or drinks or does something contrary to fasting before sunset, even if it's a minute, even if it's 2 minutes, it will not be considered fasting because that will be um, contrary to the definition that we said the fasting has to start from the break of dawn, from way before sunrise until sunset. Okay, accompanied with an intention of fasting. So a person has to intend to fast. So For example, someone, give me a second. If someone does not eat from the break of dawn until sunset, uh, does all the obligatory or the things that is needed to fast, but the person never intended to fast. He never started fasting. We'll turn off the video at this point. Okay. So a person has to make the intention. So if someone started fasting, right, from the break of dawn until sunset, but he did not intend to fast, he just didn't want to eat or drink, and he started when until sunset, that will not be considered fasting. Now, what does the intention mean? Does a person have to say it by verbally, have to say it, or just a thought that came to mind? So simply put is that a person who gets up for suhoor, and all of you are going to get up for suhoor, inshallah. And as Sheikh Abdullah said, I believe he mentioned suhoor, which is the sunnah of our Prophet ﷺ to do, is to the food that is eaten pre-dawn, the pre-dawn meal. Uh, that pre-dawn meal is actually the intention of a person that this person wants to fast. If I'm getting up to eat suhoor, that's clearly an indication that I'm eating because I want to fast. So that eating of suhoor is sufficient for a person's intention. Now, there is a difference of opinion about whether a person has to intend every day to fast. For example, if someone, let's say hypothetically, someone fell asleep after Maghrib, before Maghrib, right? Before even breaking the fast. And he slept through the entire night, woke up after the break of dawn. So clearly he did not intend anywhere from sundown until the break of dawn. Would that be okay? Would that be okay for that person to fast the next day? Uh, or if a person keeps sleeping, or that person is sleeping through even that day and woke up somewhere the next evening, so he slept for almost 24 hours, would that fasting of the next day, the day that he slept through, would that be valid? According to some, that is valid. The Maliki school necessitates only one intention for the beginning of the month. So once a person starts the month of Ramadan, the intention is sufficient to make right in the beginning, that once the Ramadan starts in the night, right after Maghrib, that I'm going to fast this month. I'm going to fast the month of Ramadan, whether 29 or 30 days. It's according to the Maliki school, it's permissible, and that will be sufficient. It will suffice this one intention for the entire month. However, the Hanafis take every day that the person has to make the intention. Anytime from after sundown, a person can make the intention for the next day. However, my preference, and you can choose whichever one. My preference is to take the Maliki school because it just makes it a lot easier for people. Again, again, if you are doing suhoor every day, then you should never worry about your intention, because that will stand for your intention. So, in summary, saying the intention that I am fasting today for the sake of Allah, the month of Ramadan, you don't have to say that. Just your understanding that you are fasting, that's that thought that came to mind, that's your intention. And that applies actually to almost every action that you do, whether it's your prayer, whether it's your fasting, your umrah, your hajj, your zakah. All the rulings of our tradition, of our sharia, fall under the same definition of intention, that you don't have to say it verbally. You don't have to utter it. Just a thought that comes to your mind, or any action that indicates that particular to that particular act of worship that's sufficient for a person's intention. So it has to be accompanied by intention of fasting. Okay. Um, the last part, it has to come from individuals who are um, permitted to fast, who are permitted to fast. So those who are permitted to fast, inshallah, we will talk about that a little later. So this is the actual definition of fasting. So in summary, the definition of fasting is a person who is eligible to fast and who's mandated to fast makes the intention from fasting from the break of dawn until sunset. So that's the definition of fasting in our Sharia. So what are the conditions that render it obligatory? So a person who has to fast, a person has to be a Muslim. So Islam is one of the conditions. A person who's not a Muslim is not required, it's not an obligation upon that person to fast. In other words, if someone converts to Islam, like mashallah, we have a few brothers and sisters in our community who mashallah converted to Islam. My both parents converted to Islam in an adult age. Their previous years prior to Islam, those years of fasting, it was not an obligation upon them, and therefore they're not obligated to make up those fasts. Although they were sane, they were mature, and perhaps maybe they did not know about fasting. But of course, we have these two, that they were sane and they were mature. So Islam is the first condition, and second thing is sanity. If someone who is not sane, meaning that person who has special needs in terms of mental illness, that person is not required to fast. Right? It makes perfect sense. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah only mandates a person to do what that person is capable of doing. A person who's not sane is not capable of understanding what fasting is and what are the prohibitions and what break the fast and what does not. So therefore, they're not required to fast. Who's mature? So children, underage, minors, they do not have to fast. And therefore, that was uh, the reason why I said that this class is meant for mature audience. So they have to be mature. Can you give me 2 minutes? I just something just came up. And,
Assalamu alaikum. This is Amr Musalhi. Until just the Imam comes back, just wanted to remind everybody, inshallah, Ramadan is likely next Friday, inshallah, and not the coming one, the one following, inshallah. So I think one of the important things is that we start taking our intention. And I know it might be harder because everybody is by themselves at home, but it's also a very good opportunity, like the Imam reminded us in the last Khatira, in the last Friday streaming, that this is almost like our Ghar Hira. And we know of a lot of incidences in the Seerah where the Prophet ﷺ, like Sulh al-Hudaybiyah, when they had the intention to go do Umrah and then had to go back. So I think for us this Ramadan, it's very critical we focus on our niyyah, and it's a good opportunity for us to just really focus inward and reconnect with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and make sure that we use Ramadan in the best possible way, because as we say every time, any time that goes away is a time that will be asked about. And whether we're at home or whether we're in our masajid or whether we're at work, it's a very valuable time. And the Prophet ﷺ reminds us that نعمتان مغبون فيهما كثير من الناس الصحة والفراغ. There are two bounties that a lot of people underestimate them. One of them is health, and the other one is free time. So inshallah, we will have time. At least we've cut our commute by being at home. So we just want to make sure that we use that time wisely during Ramadan, inshallah. And one of the important things is we actually do put a schedule for our Ramadan. I know the ICNE programming team is working hard in the background to develop a nice programming for the community, inshallah, to engage them, starting with even pre-Fajr programming until Taraweeh and after Taraweeh in a remote fashion. But I think it's also upon each and everybody of us to just think through what they want to accomplish in Ramadan. Start with writing down your intention and writing down some of the things you want to accomplish personally on a personal growth perspective, and then really try to focus those in Ramadan, because the worst thing or one of the bad things would be if we just waste our time and not benefit from that Ramadan. It's a very blessed Ramadan. Allah has put us in that situation, and Allah never puts somebody in a situation unless they can handle it. Because Allah tells us that لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها, that Allah only puts us in things that we can actually handle. So given that Allah has put us in that situation, inshallah, we can handle it. So again, just a quick reminder for us to take our niyyah, to focus on it, and then also think through what you can offer to the community. I think this online offerings that we have is really an opportunity for all of us to step up and contribute to our masjid in the best possible way. And I'm not talking about money in that perspective. I'm actually talking more about helping in any programming or any services that are possible. You don't really need much. You just need an internet connection, some gadget to access it, and then you can streamline and broadcast to the community anything that is valuable, from kids programming to youth programming to adults programming, whether by the way religious or non-religious. So if anybody wants to help and support, I think that's highly recommended. I see the Sheikh now back on, so I will go silent. Jazakumullah khair, Sheikhna, and back to you, inshallah.
La ilaha illallah. خُلِقَ الْإِنسَانُ ضَعِيفًا. A human being Allah created very weak. It was just an emergency case. My nose started bleeding, but I'm okay. I'm okay. Alhamdulillah. طيب. So back to where we were. These are the conditions that make the fasting of Ramadan obligatory. Number one, Islam. Number two, sanity. Number three, maturity. So a person who's not Muslim, a person who's not sane, a person who's not mature, meaning that the person who has not reached the age of puberty is not required to pray. To fast. Now, not knowing. So this is one of the rulings that the scholars have mentioned. If a person does not know about fasting that is fard, however, that person, it was his or her own negligence that the person did not acquire that knowledge after knowing about Islam and so on and so forth, becoming Muslim or being Muslim for a long time, then that will not apply unless if a person is somewhere or for a legitimate reason a person did not know that it was an obligation to fast. That person then is not required, meaning the previous Ramadan or the previous fast that the person did not do does not have to make up. Okay. The conditions that obligate one to fast. So that was that who is obligated to fast. Now, a person who's obligated to fast, is he obligated to fast today at the moment or the day that a person is or the day that is going to start? Is that person obligated? These are the conditions that make it obligatory to fast Ramadan. To be free from ill health, person has to be healthy. A person who's not healthy, a sick person, is obligated to fast. However, he's not obligated or she's not obligated to fast that day. So if they, and we will talk about the illnesses, if a person is not able to fast even in the future, then that person is not obligated to fast. To be resident, meaning that a person is not traveling, a traveling of a length of a shari'i distance. Since we're not traveling, I will not go into that because we are all resident at our homes at this point. For women, postnatal bleeding and menstrual periods. These two conditions apply for women. So they have to be free of these two conditions for them to make it obligatory upon them to fast that day. However, if a woman fulfills all the previous conditions, she is not obligated to fast that day. However, she will make up those days later on after Ramadan, as we all know and we practice. The conditions stipulate what validate the fasting of Ramadan. I have several things over here. I can't read the whole thing. Okay, so what validates the fasting of Ramadan? We already talked about the intention. It has to be intended. So the intention has to be there. A simple act of something that indicates to your intention, it's sufficient. Your suhoor is sufficient for your intention. To be free from anything that is contrary to fasting, menstrual bleeding, etc., etc. To be free from all the things that break the fast, so meaning that a person is not eating, not drinking, and not having any sexual relationship. So those things, the fasting has to be free from those three major things to make the Ramadan valid. To make the Ramadan or the fasting of Ramadan valid, these three conditions have to apply and they have to be fulfilled. The who are the people exempt from fasting? So we briefly talked about certain situations. So a person who is sick, a pregnant nursing woman, a person who is traveling. We will talk a little bit about these two categories, inshallah. So sickness has to be confirmed by a pious Muslim doctor. That's what all the traditional textbooks of fiqh stipulate, that a person cannot leave fast until a doctor who is a Muslim, because a non-Muslim will not know the definition of fasting, how important it is, and what are the circumstances where a person can actually leave fast and not fast. So that's why a Muslim, and it says pious, most of the books they mention that they have to be pious, meaning they have to be upright Muslim doctors. However, there is a ethical responsibility that is, there's a code for it that is established by the medical entities that they have to be honest, and they have to give an advice or give prescription or give a verdict to their patients according to that code. And if someone who's not a Muslim, but he is a doctor that understands the Islamic perspective of fasting, and he's an upright, of course, that would apply because that's the practices of all doctors. They have to, adhere to that. So in that case, even if it's a non-Muslim doctor who understands our perspective, if they advise that it is not okay to fast, or they clearly indicate to a certain type of risk, that if you do not eat or drink for, let's say, if the doctor says you have to eat or drink or have something to eat every 6 hours, and if that, if you don't do that, certain risks may occur of prolonging the disease, or perhaps even, something that will cause something terrible to your life and your well-being. So in that case, you could take a doctor's opinion on that and could go with that. But it's always good to take a second opinion from a Muslim doctor, even if it's not your own doctor, if it's not your primary care. You could take a second opinion from a Muslim doctor that this is what my doctor has prescribed, and they say that I should not fast. What are your thoughts? That would be nice. MashaAllah, we have many Muslim doctors in our community who can actually advise and give you their perspective on the situation. Again, this is a very important note that a person's life should not be. It's not necessary that it should be a threat to your life. Then you are excused of fasting. Anything that will prolong or worsen your sickness or your illness, that's a sufficient reason not to fast. So a sick person who would cause any harm of fasting, a person is excused of fasting. And that's what it is for a temporary sickness. To recover in a short period of time, like malaria. A permanent sickness is like diabetes. In both cases, the first one would apply only to that particular period of time when a person is sick, that a person can leave that day or those days. However, once a person gets better, then he or she is obligated to fast and cannot leave the fast. A permanent sickness will apply as something that a person, even if there is perhaps maybe a chance, maybe a slight chance a person might get better. But in that case, it's a person for the whole month, a person can give the sadaqat al-fitr, the fidya, which is mentioned here, pay fidya, which is the equivalent of sadaqat al-fitr. This year, again, inshallah, we'll have still $10 per day. So if a person who is a permanent sick person, he or she can give sadaqat al-fitr of $300 for the entire month. She or he does not have to wait until the end of the month to make sure that every day passes, because it's kind of understood that is a permanent illness, and the person is very unlikely to get better. However, for the first category, the temporary sickness, you'll have to wait it out. You get better in 2 days, in 3 days, in 5 days, right? Now this pandemic, they get 14 days or even more. I'm not sure the exact timing, but it's between 2 to 3 weeks. So in that case, it's understood that a person will remain sick for that long. A pregnant and nursing mom who feels that it will be harmful for her or for the child, for that mom or the future mom, she is allowed to not fast if she strongly feels that it will harm her or will harm the child. So that fear should be there. I've seen a lot of mothers, they fast the month of Ramadan while they're pregnant and also while they're nursing. However, that's not the case for everyone. Everybody's different. In a lot of cases, many moms do not feel that it will be healthy for them or for their child if they fast the month of Ramadan. So if that fear is there, they could they're excused to not fast that day or those days, and then a makeup will be necessary, inshallah. So moving swiftly forward, inshallah, hopefully that we can cover everything. I'm going to go quickly through um, what are the things that you should do, what are the things that you shouldn't do, never do, and better to avoid, and things that are equivalent. It doesn't make any difference. So we're going to talk first about the things that invalidate the fast, that will break the fast. So right now, until this moment, we talked about the things that we start the month of Ramadan with. What are the things make it necessary? What are the things make it obligatory upon a person? And who are those persons or those people who are obligated or required to fast? From here, we're going to move on to the things that once a person starts fasting, what nullify the fast, what will break the fast, and what are the things that do not break the fast. So we want to compare both. So first, we're going to go over the things that break the fast, and they have two categories. One are the things that break the fast and also necessitate an expiation, a kafara, a kafara. And the other will be that it does invalidate the fast, but it only requires a makeup. So the difference between both of them is that the first category, there's an add-on to the makeup. So you will make up a fast and also have to do an expiation, a kafara. And in the second category, there is no kafara. The rest will be the same, that it does break the fast. It does require to make up that day. So quickly, what are the acts? And what is related to that is that it has to be the current Ramadan fasts. So meaning, if a person breaks a fast of Ramadan, of the current Ramadan, the person who's fasting that particular year has to make up the fast and do a kafara. However, in the contrary, if a person is making up that day of qada, right, the qada, a make-up fast, and then breaks the fast with the conditions that we will talk about, inshallah, it will not necessitate a kafara, because the first condition is that it has to be a current Ramadan. It cannot be a past Ramadan. It cannot be a nafil. It cannot be a sunnah fasting. So it's only applies to Ramadan. Hence, it also has to be the current Ramadan. It's not a qada. So that's the first condition. So, and the second is that it has to be by the person's own free will, meaning intentionally. We talked about the definition of fasting, that a person intentionally has to stay away from eating and drinking. So if someone forced someone to eat, by force, someone made something to go down his GI, right? The passage that goes down to the stomach, that will break the fast. However, it will not require a makeup. It will not require a kafara. Sorry, it will not require a kafara, and that will fall into the second category. With the person's own free will, that I knew that I'm fasting, and I am drinking this by my own free will. So that will require then a kafara, and it will fall into this first category. And without a valid reason, a person is fasting the current Ramadan, is doing it by his own free will. He knows that he is fasting is intentionally, it's not accidentally. But I have a valid reason that I cannot fast. I have to break my fast. I have a situation of sickness or illness that I'm required to break my fast and to take medication, so on and so forth. So it has to be without a valid reason. So if any of these conditions apply, then you only are required to make up the fast and no expiation, and that will fall under the second category. So what necessitates a qada and kafara, a makeup and the expiation, is eating or drinking something that humans would normally consume, and this consumption is for nourishment, for medication, and or it pleases the body in some way. Okay, so what does that mean? It means all types of food that normally people eat, all the drinks that normally people drink, um, medication, all types of medication that it's usually consumed orally, right? Um, any of these three categories, if a person eats or drinks, then that will break the fast. You have to make up that day and also an expiation. So that's in terms of consuming. Also sexual intercourse, that a person does it knowingly, along with this one, with a person's own free will, with a person's own free will. If it's not free will, then there is no kafara, there is qada. It will break the fast. And there is no such thing as valid reason for that, right? Um, so that's all what it is. Now let's look at what is expiation. To fast 60 days in a year, in part of the year that there is no other days that is prohibited to fast, like there is no Eid al-Adha, there is no Eid al-Fitr, there is no Ramadan. So a person will only be able to fast that either right after Ramadan, which is you have Sha'ban and Dhul Qa'dah, right? 10 days after that in Dhul Hijjah. So until the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, if you could finish 60 days, then you could start after Ramadan, or you'll have to wait after Hajj, which means after the 13th of Dhul Hijjah, because those 4 days are not permissible to fast. So now, in the Hanafi madhab, there's an order, uh, but in the other madhab, there's a little differences of how this order applies and is it okay to do either one. But in the Hanafi school, this is the order. If you are able to fast, you don't have any other choice. If you're not able to fast 60 days, consecutive 60 days, then you have the choice. Either you feed 60 people, 60 poor people. Now that could be 60 people, 2 meals, lunch and dinner. That is sufficient for them. That what normally, and that we will call it a meal. So that has to be fed to 60 poor people, or you could take one poor person and feed that person for 60 days, twice a day. Or you can give sadaqatul fitr amount. So you have these choices. Either you feed 60 people, or you give sadaqatul fitr. Sadaqatul fitr again is $10. So it means for 60 days, you are, if you are giving to 60 poor people $10, that's $600. Or you could just give $600 to one poor person, and that will suffice as your kafara. Okay, so that's the expiation. Now, these are the second category that I mentioned, that it requires a qada, a makeup, but it would not require an expiation. So different categories. So we tried to put that in different categories, so it just makes it clear. So anything that goes through the mouth or the throat, eating or drinking accidentally while remembering the fast. So you remember that you're fasting, but accidentally something went down your throat, right? You were looking up and something just went in your mouth and you swallowed it, right? It will break the fast, but you don't have to make it up because what? It was an accident. You didn't do it deliberately. Eating or drinking because one thought Maghrib entered, but Maghrib did not enter. If someone broke the fast before the time, now this is eating and drinking. And right, we mentioned in the kafara that if a person deliberately eats or drinks something that is for nourishment of food, right, or water, then that would necessitate a kafara. But here, a person thought it was by mistake, thinking that Maghrib already entered, the sun already set. The person starts eating and drinking. The person knows that a person's fasting. I know I'm fasting, and also I know that I'm willingly drinking, but because I was mistaken by the timing, therefore that excuse is accepted, and a person has to make up the fasting because, as I mentioned in the definition, the fast has to go up to the last minute of the day, up to sunset. You know, and the opposite of Maghrib will be Fajr. A person kept on eating and drinking until Fajr came in, and I thought that, oh, Fajr enters at 6 o'clock. And I kept on eating from 4:30 until 6 o'clock. Oh, that was Texas time. That was Sheikh Abdul Nasser's time, right? So in that case, there's only qada, no kafara. Eating or drinking forgetfully. Now, we will talk about the things that do not break the fast, and it's important to know them, and that's why I will mention them. One of the things is that if a person um, was not thinking and doing something else and saw a cup of water, and I don't remember that I was fasting and I start drinking, and then after a little while I say, oh, I was fasting. Ah, did it break my fast or not? It did not. But however, I was ignorant. I didn't know if it was going to break my fast. I thought, oh, I drink and now it's done, it's over. And then I start drinking again. Now, this second time drinking will break my fast because now I'm drinking intentionally. I'm drinking from my own will, free will. I'm not forced. And I know that I'm fast. I should have known if I was fasting. In that case, but because I thought that the first drinking it broke my fast, and therefore it doesn't matter, right? Whether I don't drink or drink after that, my fast is already broken. So therefore, why not have a whole full meal, right? Take advantage of the time. So that will definitely break the fast. However, there is no expiation. There's no kafara. Eating or drinking forgetfully, um, thereafter thinking that the fast was broken, to deliberately eat or drink again. Also, swallowing that is between the teeth, something that is very little, insignificant, that is already inside the mouth, right? Because if it's something was outside, for example, a sesame seed that fell off the cookie during suhoor, someone picks it up, puts it in the mouth and eats it, it will break the fast. However, it's different if a person already has that or something equivalent or same amount between it between the teeth, and a lot of times we have that issue. Things or food or meat, pieces of meat stay between the teeth, and we kind of pluck it out. If a person does that, then it does not break the fast. It does not break the fast unless that is the size of a chickpea or bigger. So that will not break the fast unless if it's a big piece of meat or something else. So that will break the fast. So the difference between both, if it's an external thing going into the mouth, it doesn't matter how small it is. It just doesn't have. It shouldn't be so small that you cannot see it with a naked eye. Something very tiny goes into the mouth, that's fine. But something like a sesame seed, you put in your mouth, you swallow it, it breaks the fast. Something that is inside the mouth, small, but not big as a chickpea. In that case, if a person swallows that, it does not break the fast as long as it's small, like a smaller than a chickpea. If it's that size or bigger, then it will break the fast. Uh, hmm. Swallowing a pebble. So now this will apply. This is I think, the further explanation of something that normally is eaten or drunk in terms of food or nourishment. So now a pebble or a piece of rock or stone, dirt, typically people don't eat that kind of stuff. It's not considered food. So eating anything purposefully, willingly, intentionally, not accidentally, will actually break the fast. However, there is no expiation because it's not food or medication. Swallowing blood, again, that's also something that we don't consume blood, not vampires. Swallowing toothpaste or mouthwash. Now, this is an issue because a lot of times, and we will talk about that, I guess, or maybe I just mentioned it now, that using toothpaste and mouthwash, it's disliked during fasting, even if it's right after the break of dawn, or it's towards the end of the day, or for some of you who still have to go to work and they don't want to have that bad breath. So it is disliked to use that. It's makruh, disliked. However, some of the contemporary scholars have mentioned that um, to hurt someone by your existence or by the smell of your mouth, that it's harmful or hurt someone, or it's just aggravating the person, then it will be permissible. It will be okay to use that. Otherwise, it's disliked. However, in that process, if a person is brushing or using mouthwash, normally mouthwash, a lot of people goggle also. So if some of it goes down the throat, it breaks the fast. Now, that's something that is not usually consumed. You don't eat or drink the mouthwash, right? It's not something that usually anyone would drink. So therefore, it will break the fast, but it will not necessitate a kafara. Okay, swallowing vomit that reaches a mouthful. Um, yeah, deliberately swallowing vomit that reaches a mouthful. So a little bit that might come up, and then it goes back down. Sometimes we feel that, taste it on your tongue. That does not break the fast. However, if it comes up, you should spit it out and not let it go back in as much as possible. Um, Vomiting and thereafter thinking that the vomit or this vomiting broke your fast, and then start to deliberately vomit again. So that will then break the fast. So if a person deliberately vomits, it has to be a mouthful for the fast to be broken. Otherwise, it unintentionally, if someone is feeling sick to stomach, and you vomit, doesn't matter how much it comes out, it does not break the fast. A lot of people ask the same question, that does vomit break the fast? And a lot of people think that it does break the fast. No, it doesn't. If you vomit, it does not break the fast, regardless of how much it is. If it's a mouthful, if it's less than mouthful, if it's a lot, little, it doesn't matter. So the ruling is, again, vomiting does not break the fast. However, if someone purposefully, stuck his finger in the mouth and then vomited, if it's a mouthful, then it breaks the fast. If it's less than that, then even that will not break the fast. Smoke that enters the throat by one's doing. So someone is smoking, someone is using vaping, using a hookah, or burning something like a bakhur, and then inhaling it purposefully, knowingly, then that would um, break the fast. However, if a person is sitting to a person next to him smoking, or he's sitting next to something or making something, then the smoke comes out, or cooking something and the steam is coming out, that's fine. Taking steam, however, will break the fast. That applies the same as smoking or inhaling smoke. So a steamer, taking steam, when we have bad congestion, take a steam, hot water, or using a machine for that, that will break the fast because there's water in it and it's moist that you're inhaling in, and that's passing through your GI, so it breaks the fast. Okay, kissing that causes one to ejaculate on the condition I did not swallow the other saliva. So that's one ruling, that if this is only for spouses, if either one of them taken another one's saliva, that breaks the fast and also necessitates a kafara. So that's something that it was not mentioned earlier, but it's worth mentioning it at this point. The private parts, engaging in sexual intercourse because one still thinks Fajr has not entered. So same thing applies, just like eating, it will apply to the same the same sexual intercourse. The same will apply here. Forgetfully, thereafter thinking that the fast is broken, a person forgetfully had intercourse, forgetfully ate, forgetfully drank. In these three categories, it does not break the fast. But a person did so and then unintentionally, and then thought that, oh, it broke my fast, and then a person then engages again, that will break the fast, of course, but it will not necessitate a kafara. So these are all the different categories. We'll pass this one. That was just one part that was important to mention. The nose. Water used to clean the nose of wudu or ghusl reaches the throat. So when a person is rinsing the nose, if you strike water hard, it could go down to your throat, and that's why you should not do that while you're fasting. Inhaling medicine into the nostrils. Inhaling smoke by one's doing, right? We already talked about that. The body in general, touching that cause one to ejaculate, we already mentioned that. That will require a makeup but no expiation. Applying medicine into an open abdominal or head wound and it reaches the stomach or the brain. Stomach or the brain. So that's key, that any medication that you insert into the body and that reaches the stomach or the brain, in both conditions, it will break the fast. However, it will not require an expiation, kafara. And of course, if it's necessary, then a person is allowed to do it, and there's only a makeup for it. Now, quickly, let's go over the things that do not break the fast, that someone might think that this thing is going to break my fast, or this act that I just did, it will invalidate my fast. So let's quickly go over a few things that do not break the fast. So eating or drinking something forgetfully, right? We already talked about that. If you ate or drank and you do not remember that you're fasting, then the fast is valid, right? The Sahabi came to the Prophet ﷺ. He said, I ate and drink, I had a whole meal. What should I do? The Prophet ﷺ said, go ahead. There's nothing. إِنَّمَا أَطْعَمَكَ اللَّهُ وَسَقَاكَ, that Allah has given you food to eat and to drink. So forgetfully, if you eat or drink, it does not break the fast. Eating what is between the teeth, less than the size of a chickpea, we already talked about that. Tasting the flavor, traces of medicine in the mouth or throat. So if you had something and then after suhoor you still taste it, that's fine. Does not break it. Chewing on a sesame seed without swallowing it, right? So here, this part, chewing on a sesame seed that you have taken from outside and put it inside, you did not swallow it. You just chewed on it and then you took it out, or you chew it so much that it disappears. You can't find the parts of it anymore. Then that would be fine. Dust or smoke that enters the nose or the mouth without one's intention, without one's doing. A person purposefully did not smoke or inhale something, that's fine. Mosquito fly, other objects entering one's throat without one's doing, swallowing, the wetness that remains after washing one's mouth for wudu and ghusl, because normally when you make wudu, you're rinsing your mouth. Same thing for ghusl, when you rinse your mouth, there is still some water left in the mouth, that's fine, because that's not avoidable. You cannot avoid those situations, and that's why, although there might be 2-3 drops of water in your mouth, but that's excused. You are excused of that amount. Again, sweat or tear, etc. So one's own saliva, swallowing one's own phlegm after cleaning the throat does not break the fast. Swallowing vomit that emerges into the mouth without one's doing, even if it's a mouthful. Okay. Deliberately vomiting less than a mouthful. So that's what I mentioned earlier, that if it's a mouthful, then you have to make up that fast. It's going to break your fast. Using a miswak, right, or toothbrush. So it does not break the fast. The miswak does not break the fast, and it's also not disliked. However, using a toothbrush with toothpaste, as I mentioned, that is disliked, except for the one condition that I mentioned. Wetting one's lip with one's saliva while speaking, or while speaking and swallowing it, that's fine. Swallowing blood that exists from the gums, right? This one, the blood that comes out of the gum or the gums and mixes with the saliva, if you can taste the blood, it means that the blood quantity is a lot. So the ruling is that if the quantity of the blood is more, right, if it's bleeding severely, then if a person swallows that, and it will break the fast, there's no kafara for it. However, if just the color enters the saliva because it was a very slight bleeding, that does not break the fast. The last thing is backbiting does not break the fast. However, spiritually, it will break the fast. And I'm sure Sheikh Abdul Nasir went over that part, backbiting. It is a great sin, and it will break the fast spiritually, but it would not break the fast, from a Shara'i perspective. Performing sexual intercourse forgetfully, the state of major ritual impurity, janaba, and the person was sleeping, right? Wet dream does not, caused by looking or thinking, right? It does not break the fast. A dry finger and all the rest of the things that is mentioned here. I'll take a little pause here. I want to quickly read that, inshallah. طيب. The nose, mucus, right? Sniffing, inhaling smoke, perfume, right? Without one's doing. طيب. None of these things will break the fast. Applying kuhul, right? mascara, or anything to the eyes, it does not break the fast. Some of the scholars in the past thought that anything that applies to the eyes, it might go down to the throat. But now we know that ENT, right, the ears, nose, and throat, they are connected, the eyes are not. So anything that you put into the eyes, it does not go down to the throat. And therefore, anything that you put into the eyes will not nullify the fasting. However, if you put something in the ears or the mouth or the throat, sorry, the nose or the ears. So there's a little detail. Water entering the ears from a bath, scratching the inside of one's ear, and then um, if dirt exists in the mouth, so in the ear, and someone tries to clean it out, that's fine. Using ear drops, that does not break the fast. In particular, when it comes to adding something liquid into the ear, um, most of the contemporary scholars say that it does not break the fast. However, some say that if it's something like oil base, that will actually break the fast because oil based will actually reach to the throat. So that's their finding. However, if that could be proven that oil-based things goes down to the throat, then that will obviously break the fast. But the latest that I know of, Wallahu alam, Allah knows best, is that anything that you put into the ears, it does not, you know, eventually reach the throat. It may take some time, and if it does reach, it's a very minor, very little, that it's not really considered. However, some of the scholars say that it does break the fast if you insert any liquid into the ears, in particular something like oil. You just have to make sure that it's best to avoid putting anything in the air, anything liquid, any drops or any, unless if you're sick, if you're required to, there's a need for that, then you can go ahead and take that opinion that it does not break the fast. Rubbing oil on the body, applying deodorant, performing a ghusl, withdrawing blood. So these last three things, there's a lot of questions that come about these three things. Withdrawing blood. So withdrawing blood or inserting blood, because it does not reach to the stomach or the brain. It goes into the bloodstream or it goes right into the cavity. So in those cases, it does not break the fast. So blood cupping, you're withdrawing blood. Flu shots, anything that you insert into the cavity, it does not break the fast, because all of these things, the insulin, even shots for protein shots. Now I heard that some people take protein shots, so it's like a boost. Instead of taking pills, you could take a shot. If someone is feeling low and feeling very weak during the month of Ramadan while fasting, if someone takes the shots, it's okay. It's better not to if you don't need them. But if someone does take them, it does not break the fast. So anything that you inject in the body, because normally it goes to the bloodstream, and that does not break the fast. So any type of IVs, if you're admitted to the hospital and they have to use certain type of injections or IVs, then that's okay, and it does not invalidate the fasting. Okay. The last but not least is the mind intending to break the fast. A person intends to that. I don't feel like fasting. I'm just gonna break my fast. But actually, practically, a person does not do that. So a person does not start eating and drinking. He just intended to do that. It does not break the fast until physically, actually, someone starts to eat or drink. So just an intention of the mind is something that will not break the fast. So inshallah, we'll stop over here. I have try to summarize as much as possible. So let's open it up, inshallah, for questions and answers. If anybody has a question, you can post it here in the chat, inshallah. The water in the mouth after wudu, we already mentioned that. If someone is washing the mouth, a few drops is obviously going to remain in the mouth. The wetness, at least, will remain in the mouth, and therefore it's okay. You don't have to worry about that. It will not break the fast if you swallow that something after that. Yeah. Any other questions? I know it's a very dry subject to talk about. Sheikh Abdul Nasser was, mashallah, was very uplifting. This was a very dry, and then normally that's how it is, nature of learning details of small little things. Yes. So if anybody has any question, please let me know. طيب, it looks like pretty much done. Almost 4 o'clock. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us this opportunity to all of us, inshallah, to have a good Ramadan. Okay, there is another inhaler. Yeah, that will break the fast for asthma. It will break the fast if you're using an inhaler for whatever reason, for asthma or for, especially that's used for that. And so anything that you need to use that has substance of moist or smoke, then that will break the fast. However, if you have a condition, any asthma or whatever condition that you have, and for the purpose you're taking that is a need and is something that the doctors require you to do it, then you don't have to fast, since you have to use that. If you cannot, stay away or not use it for the amount of time that you're fasting, from 4:30 to whatever 7:30, that's roughly around 14 to 15 hours. If you're not able to, then you're not required to fast, meaning that you will only give kafara in sadaqat al-fitr. Okay, so that's about the inhaler. You can chew gum while you're fasting. It will not break the fast, but with the condition that you do not swallow your saliva, which is very hard. I don't know, how would you chew gum without swallowing the saliva or whatever the juice that comes out of it? So if you do that, if you swallow, then yes, it will break the fast. However, just chewing gum or chewing anything else does not nullify, does not break the fast. Nonetheless, to do anything of that sort, it will be disliked, as makruh. And the scholars mentioned that to chew on something unnecessarily will make your fasting makruh, disliked, meaning that act is disliked. However, it does not break the fast unless you swallow and you taste the sweetness and you swallow it, then that will break the fast. Okay, so that was the gum part. Any other questions? Allahu Akbar kabira. Okay. طيب, Jazakumullah khair. Inshallah, I look forward to, inshallah, during the month of Ramadan, we will be setting up a few sessions for Q&A, for question answers, inshallah, in particular for those questions that are related to fasting and Ramadan and zakat and so on and so forth, anything that is related to Ramadan, and also for any Q&A in general. So hopefully that inshallah we could continue a Q&A session or a discussion on religious matters that any of you have, or you want to ask a question, inshallah. Hopefully that we can continue that during the month of Ramadan, and we can be beneficial and learn inshallah a little more. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of us. May Allah make this Ramadan a good Ramadan, a fruitful Ramadan, a Ramadan that is uplifting our situation, uplifting our souls, and that we take the best out of this Ramadan by uplifting ourselves and making us strong in our faith. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you, bless our volunteers, bless our doctors, and all of those who are working very hard, volunteering in any way, in any form, whether it's from our own community or for the broader community. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all. May Allah give shifa to all those who are sick. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of our good deeds. Wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim tasliman kathira. So the periods, the bleeding of periods, this is particular for women. It needs to be minimum 3 days and maximum is 10 days. However, the 15-day period is the timing between two different periods. So a period has to be at least 3 days, maximum 10 days. And for the next one to apply, in between there has to be at least 15 days. This is from the Hanafi perspective. The 15 days, yes, is correct. It's about the timing between the two periods. And that will not apply to the actual period, the actual menstrual days. Minimum has to be 3 days. So that's about that. Can we hold Quran during prayer at Taraweeh? That's a hot topic. Okay, that's two different questions. Also, in the Hanafi school, you are not allowed to use a mushaf and read from a mushaf during the Quran, during the Salah. During the prayer, you're not allowed to read from a mushaf. However, within the Hanafi school, there are isolated aqwal, like from the Indian subcontinent, a great muhaddith, he mentions this issue in his book, Ni'ala al-Sunan, Shabir Ahmad al-Uthmani, that it is okay to, in a nafli salah, in a non-obligatory, non-sunnah, and just in a regular salah, a nafli salah, he says that the evidence, it's compelling that should be allowed to use a mushaf in a nafli salah. However, he does not indicate to using that in Taraweeh or in a obligatory prayer or any other salah. Other schools of thought allow that, and the Maliki school is the most, I think, lenient in that you could do that in any form, nafli salat in particular. You don't have to stand up, you can actually sit down and read Quran while you're praying. So some of the schools allow that. The Hanafi school are a little more strict on that, and they, in general, the mass or the majority of the scholars of the Hanafi school do not allow using the Quran and reading from the Mus'haf. The Shafi'i position, anything that is not fard or wajib, they allow that. So any nafli salat, it's completely open. You could do that. You could read from a Mus'haf. And in many places, they actually have a Mus'haf, a Tahajjud Mus'haf. It's a very long one. I have that Mus'haf somewhere. It's a big Mus'haf that you use for Tahajjud. And many of the Shafi'i scholars actually practice that in Tahajjud and also in their Ishraq or Salat al-Duha. So they use that. So that's just a little bit about using a mushaf in Taraweeh. We will not do a Taraweeh this year because of the situation, unless if a miracle happens and we start, Taraweeh. But given the circumstances, we will not have Taraweeh. However, we will do a live Quran reading session, inshallah, that will start a little bit before Isha, and we will do one juz a day that will go into a little bit of Isha time for anyone who would like to join us. However, that will not be Taraweeh. That will not be Taraweeh. I know some of these scholars, I think Imam Khalid is planning to do a live Taraweeh thing. However, the four schools of thought agree that you cannot pray behind a live stream Taraweeh. A virtual Taraweeh is not allowed, just like we do not do Jum'ah, virtual Jum'ah. Likewise, Taraweeh is also not permissible. If you want to listen to the Quran, that's an opportunity. You could listen to the entire Quran, inshallah, if you plan to tune in. But you will have to do your own Taraweeh on your own after that. Reading Quran loudly or silently, it depends on where you are. The question is that, do we recite Quran loudly or silently when someone performing Taraweeh? So that's the question of reading loud. You have the choice. There is no restriction. Although some of the scholars say that the daily prayer, like for example, your Ishraq, your Duha, or your Nawafil that you do it during the daytime, is preferred to do it in a low voice, silently, because Dhuhr and Asr, these two prayers are done silently. Therefore, even the Nafli Salat should be also performed in a silent voice. However, the Qiyam or the Taraweeh or Tahajjud, all of that could be done loudly. Umar radiallahu anhu used to recite very loud. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu used to read for a very low voice. So it is practiced by many of the Sahaba. Some of them will read loud, some read low voice. And in some occasions, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu used to recite very loud. And this verse was then revealed after the non-believers complained. And وَقَالَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا لَا تَسْمَعُوا لِهَذَا الْقُرْآنِ وَالْغَوْا فِيهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَغْلِبُونَ. Anyhow, you are free to do whatever you want. Read out loud or read in a low voice. It's up to you. Whatever way that makes you feel comfortable, that you can focus and have more devotion in your prayer, you are free to do whatever, inshallah, that suits you. Reading Quran from translation. If the question is that you want to recite the Quran in the Salah, then translation is not allowed. You cannot say Allahu Akbar, all praise be to God, the Lord of the worlds. You could do that anytime outside of your prayer, but not during the prayer. During the prayer, it has to be done in Arabic. And that's why Arabic language is not the Arab's language. It's our language. It's the language of our tradition of these. It's an Islamic language. It's a traditional language. It's a language that all of us should know and should at least comprehend some of the language. The adhan is done in Arabic. The Quran is read in Arabic. The khutbah, the main khutbahs, the aspects of the khutbah is done in Arabic. Eid Salat is done in Arabic, and so on and so forth. So Arabic language is not just particular for a certain geographic aspect or a region or a nation. It's a universal language of our tradition. So therefore, reading the Quran in the prayer is required, and a translation will not be acceptable. Okay, having said that, the question still remains that, well, how much can I read? What if I'm reading and I don't know what does it mean? For that, set a time where you read, for example, and I'm sure Sheikh Abdul Nasir talked about it, that in Ramadan, if you're setting a goal of reciting one juz a day, try to read the translation of it as well. So after reading the entire juz, go over the translation or go over some of the summary of what the juz actually is talking about. So that will, inshallah, help and be beneficial to just go over the translation. طيب. I think that's just about it. Barakallahu feekum. We're already closed, but I just wanted to make sure that we got everybody's questions. Barakallahu feekum. Jazakumullah khair. Inshallah, see you soon in the next session. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.